Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Nick Gallo for another episode of Upping Your Game. Welcome back, Nick.
Hey, man. Glad to be here. How's it going?
Nick, we're going to talk about something near and dear to your heart today, which, of course, is whistleblowing, speak up, reporting, listen up, and I'm going to actually hopefully lead us to an entire culture up, if I can use that phrase perhaps at the end of this, but how AI and machine learning can facilitate all of this with something as simple as someone raising their hand and saying, I have something I want to tell you. So I guess maybe if you could see some of the deficiencies that you have seen, or talk about some of the deficiencies you have seen over the years regarding this whole process, how do you think maybe we can lead to how AI can help with some of these?
The deficiencies, I think, have many layers. So I think the main deficiency is, like, in the context of our job being crowdsourcing risk intelligence at scale, providing insights back to the point of risk. It really requires that the stakeholders in the organization are part of this risk management apparatus, that they're contributing risk intelligence. So the level of risk intelligence that most compliance programs are receiving is really a drop in the bucket relative to what's out there. Most organizations are getting somewhere between 1.5, these are in the various benchmark reports, between 1.5 and call it 3.5 or 4 reports per 100. And if you think about the fact that people are 6 to 8 times more likely to go to their manager as opposed to using the anonymous line that the company may have put in place, there are literally orders of magnitude more pieces of risk intelligence or reports within the organization than we're getting. So that's a major deficiency, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there kind of on a macro level. But there's also a lot of inefficiency or deficiencies within the processes themselves, whether it comes from the experience that the caller has or the reporter has, if they're utilizing that internal line, if it's the experience the reporter has with their manager and that information making its way into the central risk brain that the compliance team is controlling, whether it is the way reports are triaged. Our job in many cases is to kind of be that we're kind of sorting through a haystack to find the needles. And if you're pulling one piece of straw out at a time, that's a lot of inefficiency, and that leads to a lot of ineffectiveness, or at least lack of confidence that your program is as effective as it could be. And then with respect to the investigations themselves, I think there are deficiencies. I think the information sometimes is varying across investigators or across channels. There's not consistent process adherence. I think that's another deficiency. And then finally, in terms of follow-up, analytics is a whole nother question that we've spent some time talking about in other episodes. But in terms of follow-up and in terms of bringing forward a mechanism to ensure or to, again, increase the confidence interval that the program is effective in terms of corrective action plans and so forth, I think those things leave those are all like little holes in the hull that cause the ship that is the compliance program to take on water, first of all, but also not go as fast as it can go. And I think in a time where the rate of change across all industries is sort of faster than it's ever been, it's increasingly important that compliance officers make good bets with their time. That's really what it all boils down to. So when we're not making good bets with our time, or we're spending time on things that are not moving the needle, or we're just picking one piece of straw, hoping, fingers crossed, that we find that needle in the haystack, it kind of presents a vulnerability to our programs and to our careers at the end of the day.
Nick, I'm beginning to think I should quit sending you outlines, because you say things that I want to take this whole podcast in a completely different way. And I've heard you use this phrase before, but it just struck me when you said it again. And that phrase is crowdsourcing risk intelligence at scale. What if our conversation around hotline, speak up, listen up, was not those words, not even reporting, but it was crowdsourcing risk intelligence at scale? What if corporate compliance officers said to senior management, we're going to give you risk intelligence. It's not going to cost you anything because it's a captive audience you already have and you're not utilizing them. I once heard Magic Johnson say one of the biggest selling points for the Magic Johnson theaters was there was an untapped audience for movie watching, and they all spoke English because they were all Magic Johnson's fans.
There you go.
And so are we really missing the boat here? Do we need to start saying we can crowdsource our own risk intelligence, certainly for problems, but also for solutions or just general risk management?
I got to give credit where credit's due. I got that phrase from the one and only Dr. Hemalomax, but I think it's such a powerful reframe, and it really helps evaporate away a lot of the impediments or deficiencies in our Speak Up programs. It makes it a lot more collaborative. A lot of people, they don't want to be a rat, and snitches get stitches and all that kind of stuff. But if we're talking about risk intelligence and we're reframing what Speak Up is into a collaborative contribution from stakeholders who may see something that is outside the bounds, not just of the code of conduct, but outside the bounds of what an efficient process is. All these things are risk. Fraud, waste, and abuse. Waste is a massive killer of every single P&L. And when we can make this more communal and we can make it more collaborative, and again, through that kind of a reframe, I think you get a lot of traction with stakeholders, because everybody that I know and talks, or very few people don't want to leave the world better. And very few people who are doing whatever job is going on within the organization are not seeing opportunities for improvement. And we as human beings are pattern recognition machines. And so we know when someone is behaving in a way that's outside of bounds, a la the code of conduct, but we also see opportunities for improvement in the processes that we're doing. So there's all these different points of risk that are not just discrimination risks, or again, those kind of code of conduct risks that if the ethics and compliance department can gain access to, they can take advantage of that information asymmetry because they are a unique department within the organization. We talk about compliance has the potential to be this circulatory system because it touches so many different pieces. If we're pulling that risk intelligence from these different sort of organs in the body, so to speak, it gives us an information asymmetry, or a position of information asymmetry that we can really take advantage of, not just to reframe our value within the organization, but also to reframe the impact that we can have, and we can collaborate better with other parts of the organization.
Okay, let me see if not only can I break this down maybe, but try to build some of the components that we've talked about around reporting, around hotlines, around Speak Up, around Listen Up over the years. I'm going to start with Dr. Kyle Welch and his academic paper on the savings companies got if they had a culture of Speak Up, not a reporting line or reporting system. And of course, what he found was there was a material difference in companies that had that, but that was only one part of what he found. That material difference was in enforcement actions, fines, and penalties. He found a 20% discount on civil litigation, shareholders, other customers, other third parties. But then he found there was another component, which was these companies tended to be more profitable because they were listening to their employees. So that was the first time we'd seen academic-based evidence of what we all intuitively believed. And if we go back to reporting, where it started I'm going to say negative events, but something. And one of the issues has always been around anonymity. And I see AI as possibly a way to satisfy anonymity where employees want that. Some employees will put their name on it, or you can talk to them and maybe they'll become anonymous. But if you're trying to build a corporate culture and you want to have an anonymous reporting line, you want to have employees trust that, I think AI will give you a way to do that by enhancing that part of your compliance program. From where you sit, is anonymity still as important, or is it something different now?
So I think it's still important. And when I first got into this industry almost a decade ago, everyone was talking about hotlines are going away and all that kind of stuff. And I've seen, Amazon's a great example, where there was a time where if you had a question, you had to dig into the bowels of Amazon to find a number. Now it's very easy. You can get a call in literally 5 seconds from somebody at Amazon to get your question answered. And I think that's a corollary for a Speak Up program, because there are just some things that you as a human want to talk to another human. And that could be through a chat, or that could be sort of over the phone. What we found is that we have a really low anonymity rate, and I think it's due to two things. One is the fact that we're not racing people off the phone, and we answer every single call live. So I think in the context of a risk management apparatus that a compliance program or that a Speak Up program is a piece of, you have to engage properly with the human beings who are providing that risk intelligence. And what we found is that letting those people ask their questions, not racing them through a form and getting them off of the call, has caused about half of the people who come in anonymous to be identified. And it's not like that's being pulled out of them. They at the end of that report are able to feel more comfortable with the process. They understand the controls that are in place, the protections that are in place, and so forth. And why I think that matters is twofold. One, there's all these posters and all these campaigns throughout an organization that are saying, hey, your voice matters, speak up. But then if you engage in that and you're kind of brushed aside, look, whether you're going to a manager and that manager is kind of brushing you aside, or you're calling up this anonymous line and you're getting sort of brushed aside, that creates some dissonance between the actual experience and the expectation you had before that experience based on the poster on the wall, let's say. So I think that's an important piece of the puzzle for sure. I think we're always going to have anonymity, and I think when we can leverage technology to free up our time so we're not running with our hair on fire, and that allows us to either give better guidance to those managers who are hopefully submitting proxy reports or coming directly to the compliance office with issues that are raised to them, again at a 6 to 8 times higher rate, or if we're leveraging technology in the investigation process itself, it can give us a little bit more time to let those conversations breathe. We usually can get better information from people, and we can always then provide better information to the investigators to hit the ground running. So I think anonymity is not going to go away. I think remember that bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy is all about self-preservation, and people are self-motivated, and when there's an issue, particularly when it's framed as a violation that they feel so compelled to speak about, I think those things are always we're never going to have a zero rate of anonymity. But when we can drive that down, like you said, by building more trust, and you can get somebody to turn into a culture champion, or somebody who says, oh my gosh, at my last company, the Speak Up program was so crappy, and then here it feels so different. They're going to spread that around to their coworkers, and you can get another candle lit in the darkness. So I think this whole conversation is really about AI and how we can integrate AI into our programs, not just to drive efficiency, I think ultimately to drive effectiveness. And there's not silver bullets by any means, but when we can zoom out enough to see what's our goal, to your point, our goal is to get more of this risk intelligence, then I think we can start to utilize AI in a smart way, or utilize technology in a smart way, so that we're making the right bets with our time. We're spending our time on the things that are actually going to move the needle, and not wasting our time with our wheels spinning.
You said something in there I want to pick up on a little bit, and that was the tool, or rather how you communicate. Could you say a few words about the importance of a company, of a compliance professional, of a compliance function meeting their employees in the way they communicate? So for instance, my millennial daughter, I'm like, honey, why don't you ever call? And says, Dad, what's a phone? I'll text you. I want to talk to you. I'm like, that's not talking, honey. She goes, shut up, Dad. People communicate differently now. And why is it so important to have a tool like a reporting tool that meets your employees where they want to communicate with you, and how they want to communicate with you, and how they're comfortable communicating?
I think it's an engagement question at the end of the day, right? We want them to feel engaged on sort of a macro level, to say, oh, I see something wrong. I want to share this because I believe in the organization. The mission of the organization resonates with me. I'm kind of part of this thing. But then on a micro level, we want to make it easy for them to engage in that. Those channels for this risk intelligence, all those channels should be easy to interact with. And ideally, we on the other end of it, as investigators or people downstream from the reports that these channels are generating, we should ideally be agnostic across those channels. So those channels should all have a high quality of information value coming out of them. And so I think with the advent of AI, or the proliferation, or kind of the start of the proliferation of AI, there's not really a lot of excuse anymore for not driving more engagement. We know that we're getting, say, 2, 3 reports per 100. We have to believe that there's probably 50, to be conservative. Let's say there's 50 reports per 100 within an organization, something that someone might want to know about. This is a game of influence and engagement. Our friends in the marketing department, they know that 7 times 7 rule, right? You got to say things 7 times 7 ways. We have to communicate with folks where the eyes are at. We have to pierce that veil of attention. With all these tools that are out, you can make so many graphics now. You can use Whisk to make graphics. You can use ChatGPT to come up with images. You can take a case and you can dictate a case or you can dictate sort of the story around a particular case, anonymize it and put that into your newsletter. You can put things on your portals. Like all these things that took so long from a quote unquote marketing perspective now have been kind of eliminated. That time is available to be compressed significantly. And I think in this next chapter that we're stepping into, where compliance people are really risk managers and showing up as business people, we have to rethink some of the ways that we're doing things, and we have to rethink how we're spending our time. So I think you got to meet folks where they're at. You got to make it easy for them to report, and you have to back that up with both like marketing, quote unquote, on the front end and an experience on the back end when they're actually engaging in one of those channels that are kind of all cohesive. You know what I'm saying? Like all those pieces of the puzzle need to resonate if you're going to hit that sort of tipping point and get a ton more of the risk intelligence that is like latent and existing within the organization.
Nick, one of the things that excites me so much about the use of AI in a true culture of speak up is that you can get a triage decision, or a triage recommendation, perhaps is the better phrase, much more quickly, but with much more information. Yep. So if information comes in and you have access to all other investigations, all other reports, all other matters, other information in your company, and you can triage not simply based on some rules you have set, but literally only limited by the data of your company, it can give the compliance professional a much clearer picture of the level of investigation needed and who it should go to. Yeah. Because even under this administration, they have said speed and self-reporting is critical. And so the 120-day rule applies. I was wondering if you could maybe talk to us about how we could aspirationally, or hopefully down the road, we can have this sort of additional function within the triage.
I think it's a great question, and I talk about this all the time, this theory of constraints. And in any complex system with multiple steps, there's always a bottleneck in that system. And usually when you can address that bottleneck, you can greatly increase the throughput of that system. That's just the amount of stuff flowing through the system. The bottleneck is the choke point, and that's what limits the throughput. And so in a lot of investigation programs that I'm familiar with, that triage thing is a big bottleneck, because you have to make sure that you understand the case and where it has to go and what severity it needs to be and so forth. We have built this little tool. It's like an investigation buddy. It's an AI-driven investigation buddy, and that's great. You also can build this yourself using ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that. You can start a project that you can share with your team. Again, you can limit the access, and you can set it up with the right privacy, so it's not, so your company information isn't sort of flowing out into the meta AI brain. But you can load that up with your policies, with your decision-making criteria, you can even put in your quote-unquote org chart on where things should go. And you can use something like that to get guidance in real time, saying, hey, what about this case? Here are the case details. What should we do with this case? And again, I think anything you can do in the broader sort of context of trying to have a risk management apparatus that people believe in, that other stakeholders who are not managing that on a day-to-day basis are contributing risk intelligence to, anything you can do to drive more efficiency ultimately leads to more effectiveness, right? You can follow up with folks quicker. You can show them and prove to them that their voice is heard. You can get the investigation to the right investigator faster. You can make sure that a needle's not staying in the haystack too long, right? You're putting the right eyes on it. So there's so much opportunity in case triage, using artificial intelligence or using some of the tool like we've built. But again, spending 2 hours on YouTube can get you started on how to build something like that, build a custom GPT for case triage. And you can load it, like I said, you can load up your documents and you can really customize this thing and just use some test cases and see if it's spitting out the right answer. I just think there's so much opportunity in that case triage to really improve not just investigation efficiency, but ultimately the effectiveness of that Speak Up program, because it all kind of feeds on itself. You know what I mean? Each of these components really are kind of interdependent.
Nick, it also strikes me that with all of the components we've talked about, with the engagement, starting with the anonymity, with the engagement, and now with the triage, having for the compliance professional the information available, it's going to allow you to have a more fulsome continued conversation with the person who raised their hand and spoke up.
Exactly.
But it's a long-winded way of saying we could really use AI to improve culture.
Yes. Look, culture is just a bunch of claims and the extent to which people like believe those claims and actually experience the words that are on the wall. Think about what's preventing somebody from speaking up. Think about how many people that have probably gone through your program who were scared to speak up and had a great experience. Those are all stories. Those are all frequently asked questions that you can generate with AI. Those are all anecdotes that you can push out through your Teams channel or through your Slack channels. Those are all fodder for quote unquote ads you can create that can address this thing. We've seen some people leverage AI in this way, which I think is so smart. They ran a campaign of speak up because they won't. And speaking up on behalf of somebody else. There are tons of reports in your organization. When someone sees someone else get bullied, it's not just incumbent on the person who was bullied to speak up. Somebody who witnessed that could speak up and they can raise their hand about it. So there's just so many ways now that we can really multiply our impact and generate more media or more content, so to speak, that can get some of these stuck reports unlocked.
So we've got anonymity, prioritization, communication adaptation, expanded use case, and some points around practical implementation. This really seems like an area that would be ripe for AI. And let me circle back to that great phrase you started with for crowdsourcing risk intelligence at scale.
Yep.
Nick, I'm not sure I should ever send you an outline again. Maybe we just ought to do this.
Well,
this was great.
Such a good vibe. We just take it where we take it, Tom.
All right. Till next time, Nick.
See you then.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet. Every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.